Good evening, Scott. Thank you for joining us. It is the 2-year anniversary. Let's review, if we may, where the conflict now stands. We'll talk about how it could have been averted, should have been averted, but how does the conflict now stand, in your expert opinion?
Well, the conflict stands on the bodies of almost 1 million dead soldiers, both Ukrainian and Russians. That's how it stands. It stands on the displaced civilians, Russian and Ukrainian, who have lost their homes, their livelihood. This is the reality of war. I mean, I just think we need to say this up front, that war is ugly business. And the war isn't just measured in billions of dollars or hundreds of billions of dollars. It's measured in hundreds of thousands of lives lost and millions of lives forever changed, altered by this conflict. But now that we've gone past that, I can put on my military hat, which sadly often requires one to lose an aspect of their humanity, and reflect on the reality that Russia has seized the strategic initiative some while ago, and now they're exploiting this strategic initiative. Russia has superiority and or supremacy on every aspect of the military spectrum. They are dominating on the battlefield. They are dominating in terms of military economy. They are dominating in terms of geopolitical support. There's not any facet of this conflict where Ukraine has parity or superiority. Ukraine is losing across the board. And now we come back to where we started. This translates into a significant number of dead Ukrainians. Thousands, tens of thousands have died in the past days and weeks. And sadly, if this war does not come to an end, hundreds of thousands more will die, because there is literally nothing Ukraine or the West can do to stop a strategic Russian victory, the strategic Russian victory that's taking place now.
And yet, the fools that proselytize for Ukraine, they hijacked the Twitter part of this poll. They're unable to muster the numbers to alter the ultimate result. But 75% of my Twitter says Ukraine should not sue for peace. So it's clear that these fools want the war to continue. Should it continue, what will be the result?
Well, I mean, let's try and put it into terms, because clearly these fools, as you kindly call them, don't have an ounce of humanity in them. These are people who think that war is a computer game, some sort of parlor exercise. And they forget the fact that it's flesh and blood and pain, a whole bunch of pain, by the way. It's not Hollywood, ladies and gentlemen. This isn't an actor pretending to suffer or die. It's a human being whose life is being torn asunder and feeling it ebb out of their body. It's real as it gets. So for all those people that want this war to continue, fools is the kindest word I can imagine. And I applaud you for showing restraint, because if this weren't your podcast, I'd be using different language. But let's put it in terms that they can understand. Imagine you're in Las Vegas, because we're talking about a gamble here. This is purely a gamble. The Russians are beyond the gamble point. The Russians are at the stage of this conflict where there's absolute certainty about the outcome. And so they will be very methodical in their approach. No gambles, no gambits, just a slow, inevitable grinding away of murder. That is war. And even if I think the Russians are on the right side of history, war is murder. That's all it is. It's organized murder carried out by both parties. The side that wins knows how to organize murder better than the other side. That's it. So the Russians will be carrying out this murder. But since these people, these fools, as you say, can't think of it in this way, let's think about it. You're in Vegas and you're at the table and you're gambling. You do understand that the reason why you have nice lights all around you, beautiful carpets, and lovely women serving you free drinks is because you're not going to win. The odds are against you. The house will prevail in the long term. And you've just put all the money that you had set aside for gambling on the table, and it's lost. And you make the bold decision that I'm going to take my mortgage and put it there. I'm going to take my children's college fund. I'm going to take my future and put it on the table in the insane hope that somehow I will beat the odds. You won't. You will lose everything. And for those people saying that Ukraine needs to continue this war, understand this. If Ukraine were to sue for peace today, and it would not be an easy peace, we are not talking April 2022. We're talking today. Um, there would be a heavy price to be paid politically, meaning that there would be a cleaning of the house, so to speak. The Banderists would be eradicated politically. There would have to be constitutional changes to protect the Russians in perpetuity. And there may be some additional territorial losses. For instance, having gambled to take the advice of the British and the Americans to use Odessa and the Black Sea coast as a launching pad to attack Crimea and the Russian Black Sea fleet, Ukraine will pay a price, and the price will be you will never have access to the Black Sea again, because Russia, having seen what happens when they allow an enemy access to the Black Sea and the danger that it poses, will ensure that that never happens again. So you will lose the Black Sea, no matter when you sue for peace. But the question is, what else do you want to lose? Do you want to lose Mykolaiv, Dnipropetrovsk, Kharkov? Because this is the price you will pay. And if you continue to fight, you will lose everything. And there's no chance of victory. You are literally the man who's just put his entire family's future on the crap table, praying for a number that will never show up. Because the odds aren't just stacked against you. There are no odds. There is no chance of a Ukrainian victory. And here's the saddest part, George. The West knows this. But the West is as addicted to the gamble of Ukraine as anybody. They can't walk away from the table because they have put too much into it. They know that if they walk away, they have to live with the consequences of their actions. And so they are praying for an outcome that will never come. But the price that will be paid is paid in Ukrainian lives, Russian lives, and Ukrainian territory, because Ukraine will lose a significant amount of its territory in whatever settlement comes up.
Scott, the German Chancellor committed another 100 billion has been given by the United States. The European economies have been gravely damaged. Germany itself will have given a trillion. It is almost impossible to understand why these European economies in particular, the US perhaps slightly less so, but the European economies have literally destroyed themselves in the course of this campaign. Their politicians have committed economic suicide in their support for Zelensky in this ill-judged escapade. It's pretty hard to grasp how, why they're getting away with it. From their own public, apart from anything else.
It's mind-boggling. I mean, the German farmers seem to be the segment of German society that has maintained a spine, at least understands that there's something that should be funded rather than Ukraine, and that is, of course, German agriculture. And so they are speaking out, and maybe they can rally additional German support, but I mean, this is sort of facetious of me, but I grew up in Germany in the late 1970s, early 1980s, and I was a huge fan of the Porsche 911 SC Turbo Rough Modified. Any car fanatic will know what I'm talking about. But, it's German manufactured, high quality stuff. I couldn't afford it. But thanks to the German government, Porsche is shutting down their production in Germany and moving to the United States. And there's a hope in the future that I might be able to buy a Porsche 911 SC Turbo. It won't be rough modified, but it'll say made in the United States. And that's because the German government has foregone any consideration of the German people. They are deindustrializing as they speak because of this insane desire to be seen as supporting Ukraine. Don't the Germans understand that every euro they send to Ukraine is a euro wasted? It's a euro that will buy nothing but the death of more Ukrainians. They can't win this war. NATO can't tip the scales. There's nothing that can be done at this juncture. Why they continue to foist death and destruction upon a Ukrainian nation they claim to be supporting. I mean, the reality is, for the people of Ukraine, Europe is your worst enemy. America is your worst enemy. because of Europe and the United States, you have suffered irreversible losses that can't be measured. It's unconscionable what's happening. And yet we call ourselves your friends and we keep sending you to your death.
Scott, I remember you and I talking at the very beginning of all this. The raft of sanctions had just been imposed. And Joe Biden, by the way, just announced another 500 sanctions on Russia on the principle that throwing good money after bad is just what American presidents do. We now have Baerbock, the German foreign minister, the Green Party foreign minister, admitting in public that we all knew the sanctions on Russia weren't going to work, which must come as a shock to all those Germans that have paid with their jobs, paid with their prosperity. So we impose sanctions that you're now telling us we knew were not going to work. Try and explain that.
Of course, I can't. I mean, it's literally a politician trying to reinvent the playing field, to come up with some sort of coping mechanism to justify what, in this case, she has done to the German people. I mean, she's trying to say we're on the right side of history, and we have to do what's right, whatever the cost. But this is an absurdity in the extreme. I mean, we can debate whether or not they're on the right side of history. I'm sure they can articulate some sort of claim that Russia is on the wrong side of history here. I'm willing to have that debate. Oxford, if you're listening, bring it on. But you know, they won't, because I think they ran away from you as well. But the fact is, it's one thing to say you're on the right side of history, but when you're an elected official who his duty and responsibility is with your constituents, your citizens, your nation. You must be doing what is good for your nation. What is right must first be answered by what is right for your people, not what is right for a foreign country. She has failed egregiously, but this is again the same woman who I believe once said, "I don't care what the German people think. We're going to support Ukraine no matter what." Look, George, you're an old school politician, and I wish you the best of luck on Thursday. There's nobody who deserves to be back in the British Parliament more than you. I remember meeting you, back before the Iraq War, when we were trying to do the right thing. I remember you taking me to Bath to the Labour Party conference in an effort to confront, Tony Blair. I remember you introducing me to Tony Benn. And what a thrill that was to see, this old classic political warrior. And now you are that old classic political warrior. I apologize for the term old. But you know what it means to fight for your people. You're there fighting for your people. You understand that you cannot be a political leader if you put your people last. Your people must come first. That's what's doing right by them. You do right by them, economically, you do right by them socially, and you do right by them morally. But you can't talk about sacrificing your people on the altar of, again, let's be clear about Germany. They have no original thinking when it comes to Ukraine, at least a modern iteration of it. They are following the orders of the United States, just like Tony Blair was following the orders of the United States back in the day. I think the German people have to wake up, just like the people of Great Britain have to wake up. Put better politicians in place. Put George Galloway back in the parliament and get this foreign minister out of the German politics. It's time that people who believe in their constituents are the ones who are put in a place to do best by their constituents.
Thank you kindly, Scott. Final question. Joe Biden, I often say this. Tony Blair was in thrall in the beginning to Bill Clinton. He oddly transferred that to George W. Bush with such aplomb, one wonders how he managed it. But, it's one thing following Jack Kennedy or following Bill Clinton, maybe even following, in these early years, Barack Obama. But who in their right mind sacrifices their own people on the orders of Joe Biden, visibly becoming more and more demented in front of our eyes, and with every day that passes. Can you figure that? I can't, and I'm a European. I cannot understand how any political leader in Europe could look at Joe Biden and say, he's my leader. I'll follow the old man wherever he wants to go. It's very, very hard.
No, it shows again the moral corruption of European leaders, because, as we just said in previously, their job is to look out for the best interests of their constituents. And it's one thing to say, look, the United States is, one of the largest powers in the world today on the side of what we call the democratic world. They are the largest power. They are the leader. Therefore, we will defer to America. We will look to America for leadership. But leadership in America is the byproduct of the American democratic process. And, every 4 years we vote for somebody to be our leader. And in this case, we have somebody who's no longer worthy of that title. Yes, he did win, according to some, the majority of the votes in the past election. He is the constitutionally mandated president of the United States. But leadership isn't something that's just given. It has to be earned, and it has to be earned on a daily basis. If I were a platoon commander, I have to go before my Marines every single day and earn their respect, not by saying I'm a captain or I'm a lieutenant and you must follow me, but to say, I'm Scott Ritter, I'm a Marine officer, and I adhere to the standards, the values of that. And when you look at me, I need you to be inspired by somebody that you will follow into combat, believing that I have your best interests in mind. But when you take a look at Joe Biden now, he inspires no confidence whatsoever. Therefore, if I were a European leader, I would say to my American counterparts, we want to be with you, but we can't, because he's not inspiring confidence. And if you're telling me that the directions are coming from him, I don't believe you. So before we move forward, you have to tell me who's making the decisions in America, who's the leader, who's the man behind. I mean, who is the Wizard of Oz? We see this face and talk, but it's fake. There's somebody else behind the scenes moving the levers. And if I'm a European leader, I need to know who they are so can I have confidence in the decisions that are being made. Right now, if you're telling me it's Joe Biden, there can be no confidence in decisions, because we know for a fact it's not Joe Biden. He can't even, I'm sorry, I'm not in the business of picking on the elderly. And so I don't like Joe Biden. I think everybody knows that. We have a history, and it's not a pleasant one. But the man that's standing before us today isn't Joe Biden. It's somebody who has lost his mind, somebody who deserves our sympathy, somebody who deserves a helping hand to be taken away to a place where he can't hurt himself and he can't hurt other people. He does not deserve to be the president of the United States.
Scott, I said finally, but one more. This is the second anniversary. Will we be still talking about this war on the third anniversary?
Well, as somebody who made the mistake of saying I thought this war would be over rather quick when it started, only to change my assessment as the facts on the ground changed, I am loath to try and put a calendar to the conclusion of this conflict when the Russians themselves say we're not calendar driven, we're driven by results. But I will say this: when I was in Russia back in January, I had the privilege, honor and privilege of meeting and talking extensively with Abdi Aludanov. He's a Chechen general who is a commander in the Russian army. He's just been taken off the front lines and sent to the General Staff Academy, where he's receiving further education because he's a man with a good future in the Russian military. He himself said to me, and now I can talk about it publicly because he gave an interview where he talked about it. He said that the collapse of the Ukrainian army is irreversible and that there will be major developments by May, major meaning earth-shattering, groundbreaking developments, the kind that alter a map that hasn't been altered in a year. And he said that he can't imagine how the Ukrainians would be able to sustain any viable resistance beyond September of this year. So if Abdi Aludanov, who's a man who is not prone to giving, exaggerated, he's a very realistic thinker who's grounded in the reality of the battlefield. If he's saying this, there's no reason for me to contradict him.
Scott Ritter, as always, a wonderful tour de force that will be much watched. Scott Ritter, former Marine officer, former United Nations weapons inspector, giving us the benefit of his wisdom.